for being here with us. My name is Hagir Sail. I work with the Calgary African Communities Collective. I am the principal consultant there doing systems change work, and I'll get into what systems change is and what that ensues. I've been doing community development work and grassroots work and anti-racism work and EDI work for quite some time. So I've been in and out of the work for quite some time, and I've been doing some policy work as well. And I'm here today to talk about what we could do and how we could center the work that we do without getting lost in the sauce, as they say, in the things that we do. But before I start, I'm just gonna very quickly go through what does it mean, systems change and the work that I am talking about. And so systems change, it's just addressing the underlying structures and policies that create inequalities. So it's the structured inequalities, the structured racism, the structured oppression that is in the system that creates all these imbalances that we have. And then looking at how we could shift these systems to make them more equitable, accessible, reflective, representative, fair, right, just, and all that kind of stuff. And then so, as I talked about racism and discrimination and all these things. And so there are many different ways of doing it, but my work looks at focusing with the African and Black community and how we could leverage the voices of the community, plus giving support to the community at the same time, and the foundational support for them to be able to be sustainable and function and alive and actually healthy to do the work that they're doing, but also how do we bring in the work that they do into mainstream, the mainstream system. And how do we shift the system to actually work with them without actually having them lose their identity or even lose the way that the work is being done? Because we know that without grassroots organizations, a lot of us wouldn't be here. That's one thing. And then two, the reason they exist is because there's a gap in the system. The system's not doing what needs to be done. So therefore they're doing it. And so we're looking at how we could make sure that the system could respond, but also reflect the needs of the community. So it's not just a representative system. I've been having lots of conversation about representation, and it's nice to have representation, to be sitting at a table, but we're not ornaments. So we got to be sitting at the table, but also matter. We want a table that is not just representing us, but reflects us and responds to us. That's the reality. We need all these things all at once to make it work. And so, so in my work is trying to make sure that the system is responding to us, but we're also creating the healthy foundation for the grassroots organizations and ourselves as a community led organizations to be able to survive in a system that is like a grind. If anybody's been working for quite some time, it gets really hard to keep doing what you're doing. So that's kind of my work. We could dive right into it because I know I want to get to the questions and stuff. So Leanne, you have questions for me?
I do. And in keeping in mind that we're grounding our community work here this evening, one of the questions that I had was, how have you seen, and you have so much time invested, and I know more than that, but we'll just think about time in different organizations and being able to see this over many years. How have you seen grassroots organizations and community-led initiatives balance responding to communities that they serve and are embedded in while they're addressing the needs of just organizational operations of those kind of external factors that they need to consider?
Mm-hmm. One, it's very difficult because a lot of the time the organization, the hierarchy and the organizational structures and the rules go against what the community work is, right? It's very individual and community work is very communal. So the two clash with one another and it makes it a little bit difficult. But ways in which I've seen the community work is, what's beautiful about grassroots organizations is one, they're participatory decision makers. So the decision-making process is not just me, Hagir, making a decision. When you're working with a grassroots organization, I'm so sorry, my son, no matter how far I put him, he still growls at the top of his lungs.
And he's part of community.
He is part of the community. He's growling at the wall. There's nothing there. So what happens is they make the decisions together, which is so beautiful. And I've seen it over and over again in which Decisions are made because the community comes to the consensus that this is what we need. And there's a sense of ownership to what the work is, which is very different when you have a more of a hierarchy. Decisions almost are like top to bottom, this is strategic, almost corporate-y like. And then what this one is like every single person's part of the process because we're all affected by it. And when this happens, there's a lot of inclusion. So you're including the voices of many in the community, you're including the different perspectives, and you're also adaptable and flexible, right? Ways in which they manage to continue, especially the ones that I've seen that have quite succeeded, is they're so flexible in order to fit the needs of what the community needs. And this flexibility also comes with, we're going to talk about the positives and the negatives. Comes with the negatives because it's not stable. So because they're flexible and they could switch what the community needs and then kind of respond very quickly, they're not very good candidates for funding, right? For like continuous funding, because they're like, well, we don't really know how your structure works. There's an ebb and flow. We don't really know how your programming works. Like, explain to us how this works and all these kind of different things. But what happens is that this flexibility and this adaptability makes them so much more effective in responding to what the needs are. Much more effective is because they know exactly how to get to it. And the ones who manage to balance it are the ones who manage to get like funding or supports, right? Or they've managed to create a partnership with another organization that kind of does operations pieces for them, or like helps them do governance pieces for them, right? To kind of put it into place and then kind of run it and then help them move through it. Or they manage to get a funder who seems to understand that the funding structure is difficult and is willing to fund this flexibility, right? Is willing to fund the issue and the needs of the community than actually funding a specific program, which is really incredible. And another way that I've also seen it is the feedback loop. They've done an incredible job of not data mining the community, not just sending surveys and getting so much data from the community and then kind of going off and writing a report, but the report back to the community, right? So whatever information they collect from the community, whatever work they do with it, they make sure they report back to the community and they let the community know what's going on, which brings us back to the effectiveness of the participatory decision-making. That's why everybody feels like they're part of the decision, is because they actually know what's going on. There's a healthy feedback loop that is happening and it's quite open. And usually these organizations are run by very passionate people, right? Who this is their hill to die on in what they're working. And then so very passionate people who, if they don't have funding, they will spend the last penny in their pocket to continue doing what they're doing. And so passion does really come into play here. But also they have managed to figure out how to create the relationships and the networks, and also take the deep breath to kind of create some semblance of a governance structure that would allow them to be able to function. And so these kind of fours, which is participatory decision-making, flexible organizational structures, leadership that is embedded. So all the leadership of the grassroots organization is made of the community. So they use the nothing about us without us, right? So the community itself is the leadership of what the work is and the feedback loops. This is where I've seen quite a success.
I am amazed that you answered that question with that much clarity and concise conversation, but I also think that you answered my second question. And so I'm going to say my second question out loud, but I think I'll actually extend it a little bit. So my second question was going to be, what would you say are the ways that people can keep community at the center of tasks like strategic planning and decision-making or operations? You spoke about 100% being embedded, people being the grassroots organization. Who you are serving is also who you are that is doing that serving. You are one and the same. You talked about the participatory decision-making structure being embedded again into the way that they're operating. What would you say? You also talked about the passion and how that passion can be balanced with taking a breath and putting some structures in place in order to be able to go out and do it. What would you say are current concerns that people are seeing about being able to make that balance? I'm thinking about things like burnout. I'm thinking about things like layered crises or intersectionality.
Burnout is the number one reason a lot of things kind of fall. People get really tired. But I think more dangerous than burnout is becoming jaded. It's a lot more dangerous to be jaded. That people, when they burn out, they just want to take a break. They're really tired, and then they just want to rest. When people become jaded, they've now become stuck in a specific mindset, and it's hard to shift them out of it. And so we were in a conference in Banff on systems change, and we were talking about it, and the discussion was, I find it personally, I was telling them, like, I find it very difficult to have a conversation with someone I like who is jaded than someone I don't like who's just terrible. It's a much easier conversation to have with someone I don't like, because I know exactly what I want to say and what I want to do and how we want. But also what happens is, even if we are disagreeing, there is a chance of that shift happening. But I find it very difficult when I'm meeting with people who are very jaded, who have now cemented their mindset. When you talk to them, they'd be like, I've been doing this for 25 years. I know how this community functions. This is what needs to be done. And you're like, but you've been doing it for 25 years and nothing happened, which means you're not doing it right. Can we just please shift? No, I know how they function, right? And then you can't, and sometimes they are the decision maker and you cannot get them to budge. And so the danger for me is becoming very jaded, because it's hard. It's really hard work. This work is not, you're not dealing, with great things. It's really hard. It's very emotionally. The toll, I think the cost of it, there isn't no amount of money that would talk about the emotional and mental cost that it takes on you. You can't turn it off. You can't come home and be like, oh, I'm off. It's constantly there, because the issues permeate everything. Like you said, the intersectionality of it all. I think also lately, it's just life has become so much more difficult in all levels. And so not only are you working to help people, but you're also drowning. And so you also need to be saved. Like, we're all in this weird ocean and the currents are just out of whack. Some of us are drowning. Some of us are making it a little bit. Some of us are on the island, but we need to get water. It's all over. We're all over the place, but we're all in one way or another sinking. And I think it's really hard for some, organizations to kind of keep afloat, because before we were okay, but now okay is not okay, right? And so finding out a balance in which, how do we center self-care? I think one of the biggest conversations I've been having with a lot of the grassroots organizations I've been working with, they're so tired, but they're like, I can't stop. I'm giving food to people, and if I don't give them food, they won't eat. And so I have to keep doing what I'm doing. And you're just like, but if you get sick and you're out for a very long time, one, you're useless to you first. First and foremost, you matter the most. So take care of you. But at the same time, it hurts them too. So be able to take care of yourself. And I think being active in the self-care process, taking care of oneself, actually taking the breaks that are needed, and also understanding, it may sound hard, but the issue isn't going anywhere. It's not running away. Right? I was having the conversation with somebody and they were talking about, like, if I don't do this, racism would, and I'm like, racism is alive and fat. Like, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And so we could still continue to do the work, and we could work really hard, but also trust that so many of us are doing this too, right? Trust the rest of us to be able to pick up pieces as well. Let's connect and talk to one another. And I think it becomes really, really difficult. And I think your question also talks about, like, what does it look like if we want to be strategic in the way that we want to do the work that we're doing, or what it looks like operationally. And I think the conversations I've been having and just what I've been seeing in the community is, it's, of course, first and foremost, all has to be community-led, right? Community-led strategic planning is so messy. It is hard. It is so time-consuming, but it's very important. because then it gives this, like I said earlier, it just gives this sense of ownership for everyone who's involved. And the strategy is mine as much as it is yours, it's ours, right? And it makes it work so well. And the way I look at it, even though it's hard and it takes time, it's an investment because it does pay out, and incredibly so with time, and it builds trust because in all the work that we're doing, we're moving at the pace of trust. If we're not trusted, we're not getting anywhere. And so as we build the strategic plans together, as we make the decisions together, all we're doing is cementing these relationships, making them stronger, building that trust. Communication, clear communication and transparency is very important. I think burnout usually happens a lot of times when I'm seeing it. It happened to myself as well, is when half the time you don't know what's going on. You're trying to figure out what's going on as you're going. And then you'll go to a meeting and you're like, what you're saying is not what we said last time, and you don't know what's going on. You're picking up pieces here and you're picking up pieces, and it's just becoming overwhelming. Transparency and clear communication is really, really important. And being honest, being like, okay, I can't do this, but I could do this. Because what that allows is, as we're having the conversation, I'm seeing what we're having is that when I say I can't do this, someone almost always comes in, be like, well, I could do that. Yeah. I could pick up that piece, and then you could do that. And then all of a sudden, I don't feel like I'm just running around all by myself. The example I like to use is the Billy Joel song. I think he says, there's a line, he says, well, the waitresses practice in politics while the businessman slowly gets stoned. They're sharing a drink they call loneliness, but it's better than drinking alone. I think sometimes we keep thinking that we're completely alone in this circle, but we're all sharing this drink called it's not loneliness, but whatever it is that we want to call it. Yeah. So these, like transparency and communication, being community-led strategic planning, and then also aligning the goals, making sure that we know what the goals are with the community needs. I think a lot of the times we tend to think like community needs are the goals, but what is it that we were trying to do and where are we going? It's really inspiring for the community, for them to see the future, to be like, this is where we are, this is where we want to be, and this is where we're going towards. It gives them just that push, right? And it gives them that inspiration to keep moving forward. And of course, capacity building and programming that is responsive, and of course, shared leadership and all these kind of things, but always letting the community see the future and be part of the future conversation. And like I said earlier, nothing about us without us, but centering the voices of the community in the work that is being done and making sure they're part of the decision making as well is where the success piece comes in, and where it could kind of mitigate that burnout on all those pieces.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I kept thinking as you were talking is about if we've involved and invited investment and made sure that that's there from the beginning, that embedded nature of how we're going about doing organizational or other tasks, then we're also inviting the shared load and the sustainability of that in what we're doing by inviting in that opportunity to share the load, by inviting in that opportunity to have more folks at the table who are saying, I hear you, you can't do this, maybe today, maybe it's next week, maybe whatever it is. Here are some ways that we can go about still doing that. And you rest and you have that ability to do that. It's never going to work perfectly that way, but the different elements of sustainability that you can build in being so important. Thank you.
Absolutely. No problem. I think one thing I want to mention is that something that I saw that work really well for some organizations is creating community advisory boards. Because sometimes it's very hard to just talk to the whole community. But when you create a community advisory board, sometimes it does a really good job of just helping you stay grounded and keeping your finger on the pulse as well. It's another way.
Yeah, I love that. And as I said, I could listen to Hagir and talk with Hagir and have conversations all evening. And I'm sure that after these few minutes, there are other people who feel that same way in this group. But I want to say thank you so much. And we will continue talking, and there will be opportunity for people to keep talking this evening. with all of those things in mind, and knowing that we are all people doing work, doing community work, and trying to make these impacts in community, I hope that this evening is a lot about what Hagir has just been talking about. I hope that you are able to see those folks who are also doing things and who are also there to take some of the load. In this particular instance, we're talking about sharing knowledge and sharing strategies and sharing skills that can help people to do the work that they want to be doing. But we're going to hear from a few folks in a little bit more formal capacity on what those things are that they are offering to communities, to grassroots organizations specifically, as well as community-led initiatives. There is also going to be a summary document that you will all receive. And the reason I stress that is because within that summary document, it will be very clear whose supports are available for which types of work. And so by that, I know there are folks here that are parts of nonprofits, incorporated entities. There are folks here that are not. There are folks here that are part of doing work on their own in community and kind of a little bit more contracting or that type of facet. And so we will spell out within that summary document which resource, quote unquote, is able to work with each different kind of type of community work. So please keep an eye out for that coming to you likely next week. And we're going to open it up. We're going to start with the GAIN team with Rose. If you are, it looks like you're ready to go. And I'm just going to read out. After that, we will have the Calgary Foundation, Volunteer Alberta. There's a United Way Grassroots funding opportunity or conversation as well. And then we will go into breakout rooms where you will also be able to hear from CDLI. Tyson has joined us and is going to be speaking to what CDLI does. There is also folks in those rooms who have some knowledge around Activate YYC granting opportunities, as well as some of the Government of Alberta CD unit supports and resources that are available. So those folks weren't able to join us here tonight, but they can speak to that. And certainly if anyone has any questions, there will also be the opportunity to stay with Hagir and I in the main room. So I'll pass it off to you, Rose. We've got kind of 3 to 5 minutes just to briefly talk about what it is that the GAIN team does, who you are, who the GAIN team is, and then I will identify those breakout rooms with exactly the names of the resources that are in them later on, so you'll be able to follow up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. First, I want to thank Leanne for the opportunity to come and talk to you about the GAIN team. The GAIN team, first of all, I'll tell you what the acronym stands for is the Group for Gaining Advantages in Nonprofits. So we are a team that works under the umbrella of United Way. We do work independent of United Way, but we work under their umbrella. So we have a group of about 70 skilled volunteers from very different industries, different walks of life that have volunteered their time to help nonprofits. These services are provided all free of charge. So we do come in and provide different consulting services. And I will talk about, I don't know, Leanne, whether we should show that presentation or I can just speak to it. Either one is fine.
I will be honest, Rose, that I have forgotten about it, but I will find it and share my screen in a second if you want to start talking to it.
I believe some of these materials will be given to
yes.
anyways, but the areas where GAIN, there's 4 areas that GAIN can assist nonprofits. One area is board governance. So we have a team that is looking after board governance. And what that means is they can help you assess your current structure, try and refine your governance practices, look at aligning board roles, purpose, strategy, do risk management, so that type of activity. The other piece is leadership coaching. So we've got a team of qualified or coaches that will either go in and do leadership coaching for leaders in your organizations or managers. And recently, we've also started doing some leadership coaching for teams. So if you have a team of people or a leadership team that required coaching, the program is generally about 6 to 8 weeks. And the coaches will come in and do those sessions for that period of time. The third area is IT assessment. So there's actually not people coming in and implementing IT solutions, but it's really helping to look at your IT strategy. How do you bring in the right resources that you need, building policies, that type of thing. And then the area I'm in is strategic planning. I've been with the GAIN team about 8 years now. And probably half of that I've been leading the strategic planning team. And what we look at is working with organizations to help develop, maintain, and update strategic plans. We also look at refreshing vision and mission statements. We try and embed that into the organizations. And we ensure what we do is work with the organization to develop a actionable plan. So plans aren't very good if you develop them and you put them in your drawer and you don't look at it for another 5 years. We really want the plan to be actionable. So what is it that you want to achieve? Who's going to work on it? When are they going to do it? What are the checkpoints? And what does success look like? So those are the very aspects that we look at. We've got a few metrics here because we've been around, as I said, quite a number of years. So the last 2 years, we've worked on 62 projects and probably dedicated about 3,200 hours of volunteer time. And really our goal is to really help build capacity within organizations. So we'll come in and help you build a plan. And our hope is that we've built the capacity and knowledge so that your organization then carry forward with that plan and keep it living and growing. So hopefully we can develop that knowledge. I've learned a lot actually being in this role, how passionate people are in the nonprofit sector and the skills and skills that they bring. But one thing is that they don't bring the same skills as everybody else. So that's where we're looking at supplementing the skills that are in the nonprofits with the volunteers that we have within the GAIN team. See if there's anything else. I think that is probably the gist of it, unless people have questions.
Thank you, Rose. I think that's wonderful. And I apologize again. I wasn't able to locate that as you were talking, but we will have that document available for folks to have more. And we'll do questions in the breakout rooms. So we'll move to Calgary Foundation, and Julie is here to speak to some of the grassroots granting and community opportunities for funding as well.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me over my cat Maple's purr. If not, just know how healthy cat purrs are for humans. So this is a little self-care moment for me when he wandered over. So that's really nice. But I can still tell you a little bit about Calgary Foundation. We're a charity here in Calgary of the community foundation model, which means that donors set up funds with us that we then pool together and invest and use the proceeds of those funds every year to support good work in the community. Primarily, that means registered Canadian charities to help them with their program delivery and design and the sort of back office things they need to do to be strong and effective organizations. But back in the 90s, the foundation added an element, realizing that there are people doing really important work through nonprofits that don't have charity status or even informal groups of people. That's really important for the well-being of Calgary and area. Particularly, we think about it as belonging-based work. So things people are doing to help the communities that they're part of build a sense of inclusive belonging. So that's our little grassroots grants programs. We have Stepping Stones, which is the most accessible one, up to $1,000, and it supports all kinds of things that people want to do to build a sense of belonging. And then we have ones that stagger up from there to larger amounts of money. So I'm a good person to chat with about all of these things because I'm happy to steer you through the support we have available to see if anyone might match the work, the community work that you're doing. I know sometimes our little Stepping Stones has really just stepped in, pardon the pun, and helped a little bit for organizations that are so small and grassroots. They're pretty much self-funded. I know sometimes it's nice just to give people a break from that. But other times it can be used for organizations as they develop and grow with their eye towards bigger pieces of work. But anyway, happy to chat with anybody here tonight who's a community development, community worker about what you're up to. Thanks, Leanne.
Thank you so much, Julie. And next on our list, we had Volunteer Alberta. Michael, that's you up.
Awesome. Thanks, Leanne. So hi, everyone. My name is Michael. I'm the Coordinator of Operations at Volunteer Alberta. So Volunteer Alberta, our full name is actually the Association of Volunteer Centers and Volunteer Engaging Organizations, but we just call ourselves VA often. We're a fairly small team. We're about 12 people, so we know how hard it can be to try to do big things with tiny teams. Our mission is to nourish well-being and health communities of belonging by cultivating the conditions for volunteerism and civic engagement. And I know that's a bit of a buzzwordy mouthful, but essentially we believe that through volunteerism and civic engagement, communities can thrive. So we aim to support the organizations and groups to help to foster these kind of connections. I do want to be very clear that we don't actually connect volunteers to organizations. We don't have a pool of volunteers or a place to make volunteer postings. There's a lot of websites and resources that already do that. Instead, our work is about developing volunteer programming and setting people off on the right foot to kind of develop meaningful relationships. We do this through our education library and webinars on volunteer screening and volunteer engagement. We have a vulnerable sector check fee waiver program, which is available in Calgary, a screen development grant to develop your screening policies and procedures, which actually opens next month in June. We also have a National Volunteer Week Enhancement Grant to help celebrate volunteers around National Volunteer Week in April. That grant normally opens in February or March. And then we also have our youth engagement programming to help build confidence and connections with the next generation. Our focus in the most recent years has been to help ensure volunteer management is built on healthy relationships and is person-centered, rather than a simple checkbox and seeing volunteers as free labor. We know volunteers are way more than that. They have so many special skills and ways to contribute. And we're trying to do our best to walk the talk too. So internally, we've been doing a lot of shifts to better align with our values around inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and social justice. We're always happy to chat about that and what's working for other people and help each other out along the way. But yeah, what it comes down to is we just want to help support people and groups who are doing the good work in the communities.
Thank you, Michael. And we were going to have Federation of Calgary Communities here. I don't see Colette. And so I will also state that we will have that follow-up information on the summary document and in the follow-up that you will receive. So if you do want to connect with Colette, I also can certainly probably answer a few questions, baseline questions about Federation if anybody has them. But we'll move on to Savera and Diane. I'm not sure if both or one or the other of you, but United Way, Grassroots.
Sure. Thank you, Leanne, for having us. Really excited to be here and kind of share some of what we do in community. Apologies, my partner's watching soccer highlights, so if you hear scoring or goals, that's what that is.
I love evening events for that.
That's right. Sports do go on, I guess. So I can do a little quick introduction of United Way, and then maybe I'll pass it to Zavera to kind of talk more about our grassroots specific fund. But in general, so United Way is a nonprofit organization to mobilize communities for lasting social change. We do a ton of things, including leading and backboning a lot of large initiatives in the community, including the Community Hubs Initiative, Healthy Aging, Planet Youth, All One for Youth, a lot of different kind of large scale initiatives. But another arm of our organization is also the fundraising piece, where we fundraise from all over Calgary, and we basically have a funding arm where we provide grants to nonprofit organizations. And historically, those grants have been fairly closed. Like we fund more or less the same partners to kind of introduce stability in the sector and make sure that there's kind of long-term funding. But we realized through some of our work, as we're leaning more towards implementing our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy, we recognize that we need to kind of break up a little bit of that structure and really think about how we introduce grants available for grassroots organizations. And we've been working for the last year or so on how that looks and what we can do. So I'll pass it to Devera to maybe speak to that and what we've done so far and what to expect.
Yeah. Thanks, Diane. I really appreciate your introduction. And I would also want to thank Rose for speaking about the GAIN team, because that's a huge part of the work that we can support is through the GAIN team. And there's a brochure somewhere that we can upload and send over to Leanne if you want. So in terms of the grassroots empowerment strategy, the way we're looking at some of the work we're doing is around systems change work. And within the system, if you look at the ecosystem in the social sector, grassroots play a really huge, important part in keeping the fabric of the social sector healthy. And going back to what Hagir was talking about in terms of participatory decision-making, this is where grassroots play a crucial role in bringing the voices of the people who are actually the ones that we are trying to impact or working on projects that are impacting their lives. We want to make sure that there is a connection to the community that we're serving. So nothing without us without us is an important principle of that healthy ecosystem. So when we talk about systems change work and working within the ecosystem, grassroots play a huge role when it comes to not only that voice in decision making, but also the accountability of the system to the people it's serving. And it talks about citizens engaging in the civil society and in the civic decision making. So to that effect, and to implementing our diversity, equity, inclusion strategy, it's important that United Way supports grassroots organizations. And through that, there are a couple of ways that we're thinking of doing that. One is to work with collaboratives and collectives like the Calgary African Community Collective that is leading a lot of systems change work, or Action Dignity that is working on capacity building of grassroots organizations, and also working on having a program stream available for small grants available to grassroots, just a bit like Stepping Stones that Calgary Foundation has. Now, related to this, this year we've also started developing a plan for digital equity and inclusion. And the reason why I've started doing that is because what we're observing and what we're hearing is that because of the rise of AI and how digital technology can support a lot of the work that organizations are doing, perhaps there is a way for us to leverage digital literacy, access to digital equipment, and to just look at how organizations can use this technology, for example, mobilize volunteers, deliver services, and all those kind of things. Tie digital equity inclusion into the grassroots strategy that we're working with, and also on equity inclusion programs that we have other than grassroots. So digital equity and inclusion is something that's coming up for us, and that's where we look forward to working with grassroots in whatever we can do to support their work. Because a lot of this work is led by one or two people, and there are a lot of volunteers that they need to mobilize. So how can we harness the power of technology to do all of that work? So that's a little bit about what we're doing. Yeah, happy to answer any questions. Oh, one last thing. From next week, we actually have someone dedicated to this particular area of work, starting with our team, and we can introduce that person to the group when they start.
Thank you, Savannah. Yes, we will make sure to update the summary document and the follow-up information for folks with that person's name for sure. Though I know Diane and Savannah, you'd be happy to make those warm introductions and passovers as well for that person starting. So this concludes our kind of a rapid fire. These are your introductions to the folks who are here this evening. We will open up breakout rooms, and somehow, thank you to everybody who spoke. We are exactly on time for opening breakout rooms, so I appreciate you all so much for that. We're going to open up breakout rooms. I've listed very clearly, because we have only a few folks here, exactly who will be in the breakout rooms. So you will see Calgary Foundation's name, and if that's who you're looking to speak with, then you can go into that breakout room. We will have about 20 minutes. And so I would encourage you to make the use of that time as you can. Introduce yourself when you go into the breakout room, the work that you're doing if you don't know or you haven't seen the other folks who come into that breakout room with you. There are some folks, Tyson, Ben, Carolina, who will help to encourage that conversation if you should so need in that breakout room. And they will also be taking a few notes, not identifying notes, but more so of what was the most important question that was asked in that breakout room, things like that, so that we can read those back into the recording afterwards. The breakout rooms will not be recorded. And so you can feel free to identify yourself as much as possible, or the work that you're doing, and hopefully be honest and transparent as we were talking about with what it is, the challenges that you're facing, what supports you might be needing, how those might be able to come together. And you will be able to self-select which breakout room you would like to go into. So you should see a box pop up on your screen. If you're joining on a phone or another device, you may need to click the 3 dots in your menu panel in order to find the breakout rooms, but you should be able to get there yourself. Hagir and myself will be staying in the main session. So if you have questions for Hagir or you want to talk to me, you're welcome to stay with us. And I think that's it. I'm gonna ask for support because it is getting to 7 o'clock and this toddler mom is getting a little, anything that I haven't answered or any questions that people have about this next step. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording here, and I'm going to
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. Our virtual world was it was just me and our funding partners here from United Way and Calgary Foundation, but I did just ask them to share with me if there was anything that they had forgotten from their initial presentation that they'd given us earlier on in our meeting. And so one thing, and please interrupt me if I'm misinterpreting anything, but United Way had just mentioned that their signature initiatives like All In for Youth, Planet Youth, Community Hubs Initiative, Healthy Aging Alberta, these are, although they're bigger initiatives, they still work very closely with a lot of grassroots organizations, and it's still a vehicle for them in supporting that grassroots work. And so that they you know, there could be some opportunities there for for community groups and grassroots groups to be able to access funding, but it's going to show up more organically. It's not like it's there's an advertisement or anything for that funding. And so if you're a part of that those initiatives, or you're involved, there's these opportunities that might crop up, and that tends to look a little bit more nimble than some of the more structured funding that they have for larger agencies. And so Savera and Diane did mention that they would be happy to connect folks with any of the people that are leading those initiatives if that's of interest. So that was just something that wasn't mentioned, along with that highlighting again just the digital equity funding program that they have that is actually running and alive and kicking right now. And so that can be accessed by folks as well. So that was those were the couple of things that just didn't get shared, and feel free to add anything, Severa, Diane, and of course Julie as well if you want to too. So
That over to take them.
yeah, so I think that's it from our group.
Thanks, Ben.
I can add something to digital equity. The way we're looking at digital equity inclusion is to open up opportunities for organizations to engage in a partnership that's around digital transformation. So it's connecting with the tech industry so that they can work closely with the organizations to build capacities around digital inclusion. And also working with on a programmatic side of things on digital literacy and access to equipment. So it's not exactly a funding program, it's more of a capacity building program. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Wonderful. And I thank you for saying these things back into the recording, because we do know that there were about 30 people who had registered to be here this evening. So I know there are folks who will be watching this later and who will want to have that information. So I appreciate that. We'll move on to maybe Tyson from your breakout room. Anything that you'd like to read or say into?
Yeah, so it was just myself, Emole from CommunityWise, and Michael from Volunteer Alberta. We were able to really hear from Emole, but I think we specifically really just talked about a kind of value alignment and who we center. And there was a conversation that really that we heard earlier as well about like how to build community and like what are we designed for? What is our organization designed to do? And that theme really came up. And so I think it was specifically around, I think oftentimes we challenging also sort of our membership model, what that means and looks like. With CDLI, we don't have members per se. We have groups of people that come together. It's an easy word to kind of encompass like why people show up, but it's not hinged on anything. It's just you coming into the space. And so thinking about, so often so many groups have membership models and resources are tied to that. And how do we challenge that as a way to open up more space for more people, but also role model different ways of doing that actually end up with the same and maybe more improved results of more community. And so that those are a couple of the themes that we talked about specifically around this society's act mandate of like, how many members do you have? What does it look like? But being able to really explore that a little bit deeper, that it actually isn't maybe serving all of us as well as it should, and the deeper community. So that's a little bit of what we were talking about.
Thank you, Tyson.
So it was very specific, but I think it really encompasses a lot of why we do this work.
100%. Thank you, Tyson. And we'll move on to Carolina, if you have anything you would like to say in.
Yeah, I feel like the common kind of reaction was that a lot of people didn't know about GAIN and all the resources that they offer. So they also shared that this is a great platform to get information, to share knowledge, to share resources. And we learned a ton about how to start that process, how to apply all the different sectors, I guess, and how to also apply that into very specific examples and organizations. And one very beautiful moment that happened in the session was someone was sharing their experience, and it was a little bit discouraging. And someone said, don't listen, keep going. You know what you're doing, you have the expertise, don't get discouraged. and you have a mission and just go for it. And yeah, that was really beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think that's a wonderful note to end this on, as encouragement to keep doing the work that you are doing, and encouragement to know that there are others out here who do see that work, who do that work in their own ways, in with other, you know, communities or with other populations. You know, no one, I don't think here is duplicating anybody else's work, but we're definitely all there trying to move things, and work with things. And so you are not alone nearly as much as you think you are. I know that that can be a feeling for sure in this work sometimes. And I'm so grateful that you all came and joined us to have this conversation and discussion. I am not going to go anywhere. Certainly we can keep this Zoom session open as long as people would like to be here and would like to be chatting. But I am going to just highlight through sharing screen that we will continue this conversation. This conversation was started, and we were lucky enough to have had so many partners who were saying yes and putting their hand up to come and be participating tonight, because we are hearing this from many different people who are doing community work, that they're not sure what the supports are that are out there, that it could be a full-time job to try to look for those types of things. And so we hope that these efforts we're taking will help to respond to that we're hearing from community. And we will try to continue the conversation, even though CDLI's, you know, mandate and mission and vision is a little bit more broad than this specific conversation, but we will try to continue, and we'll offer this Grassroots Organizations and Community Initiatives event in person here in Calgary. If anybody is wanting to join virtually, I would love to have that conversation, and we'll certainly support that. We will not have the technological ability to have everyone and many like a full hybrid scenario, but we certainly could support a few folks to come virtually if that was what was needed. And the idea is that this will be the grassroots folks. This will be the folks doing the work, coming together to meet one another, to ask the questions they've always wanted to ask someone else who's doing something that's similar or close to, and to find that connection. It will be a facilitated evening. If you think about it as more than networking, there will be some intentionality and some focus for the discussion and conversation, but lots of space for folks to meet one another as well. And a special thanks, of course, to the Women's Center, who is offering us this space for CDLI to have this conversation as part of their focus on community work and supporting community work as much as they can, through certain initiatives that they have specifically, but also this partnership with CDLI for this as well. And so my open invitation, CDLI holds things that are open to all on a regular basis. I think most of you are aware of those, so I won't talk too much about them, but my open invitation, anytime that this works for you and CDLI is a fit in your schedule, we would love to see you. And we also just enjoy seeing you around community as we bump in places where we haven't expected to see one another or those types of things. It's always a pleasure. I'm going to end recording here. And as I said, please feel free to stay and continue to chat. And you'll hear that prompt in just a second.